You didn't stop chasing because you stopped caring. You stopped chasing because something in you finally stabilized. And that truth is harder to accept than heartbreak because chasing once felt like love. It felt like devotion. It felt like proof. You were invested. So when the urge disappeared, you didn't feel proud. You felt confused. You wondered if you were becoming indifferent, if you were closing off, if you were losing your depth. But your body wasn't pulling away. It was standing still. For the first time, chasing isn't passion. It's activation. It's what happens when connection feels uncertain and your nervous system tries to secure it. You chased because something was missing. Consistency, presence, emotional reciprocity. And instead of naming that absence, you compensated. You reached. You waited. You followed up. You softened yourself so connection wouldn't break. That wasn't weakness. It was adaptation. Your body learned. That movement kept closeness alive, so it stayed in motion, even when it was exhausted, even when it was confused, even when it was giving more than it was receiving. Then something changed. Not suddenly, gradually. Your body noticed. That chasing never led to safety, only temporary relief, a response, a moment of reassurance. Then the cycle restarted, and over time, your system learned that chasing was costly, not emotionally dramatic, physiologically expensive. It raised your baseline stress. It disrupted your sleep. It kept your attention outward instead of grounded inside yourself. So your body adjusted. It reduced output. It conserved energy. It stopped running after signals that weren't consistent. That's not detachment. That's regulation. When regulation arrives, the urge to chase fades, not because desire dies, but because your system no longer confuses pursuit with connection. You still care. You just don't abandon yourself to prove it. That's the part that feels unfamiliar. Care without anxiety, interest without urgency, affection without overextension. This is where many women misread themselves. They think, if I cared, I'd try harder. But that belief was built in imbalance, in relationships, where effort wasn't mutual, where care required pursuit, where love had to be earned through endurance. You don't chase now because your body recognized something essential. If connection requires pursuit, it's already unstable. If closeness depends on effort from one side, it's not intimacy, it's management. And you grew tired of managing connection instead of being in it. So your system shifted. It chose stillness, over strain, observation, over pursuit, discernment, over proving. That shift feels quiet, almost empty at first, because chaos was familiar. Stillness isn't. You may miss the feeling of intensity, but intensity was never the same as depth. Depth doesn't need chasing. It meets you, and your body knows the difference now. That's why you don't chase anymore. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally stopped confusing care with self-erasure. The urge to chase didn't disappear overnight. It weakened every time your body noticed how much energy it cost, every time you waited for a reply that never fully landed, every time you felt relief instead of joy when they showed up, every time you adjusted your tone so you wouldn't ask for too much. Your nervous system was paying attention even when you weren't ready to. Chasing kept you hopeful, but it also kept you activated. And activation is not the same as connection. Activation feels like movement, like urgency, like needing to do something, so nothing falls apart. And for a long time, that felt familiar. Familiar doesn't mean healthy. It means practiced. You learned early That closeness required effort. That love didn't arrive and stay. It had to be maintained, protected, secured. So when something mattered, your body moved toward it. Not calmly, strategically. You anticipated. You followed up. You filled silences before they became distances. You weren't chasing people. You were chasing regulation, trying to settle the unease that inconsistency created. And sometimes it worked. A message came through. A plan was confirmed. Affection returned. Your body relaxed. Briefly, then the tension crept back in. Because nothing actually changed. The pattern stayed. You just ran faster inside it. This is the part most women miss. Chasing isn't about desire. It's about intolerance. For emotional ambiguity, your system wanted certainty, not intensity, but the only certainty available was effort. So you offered it again and again until effort became exhausting, until your body started to protest. Subtly at first, a tight chest, a heaviness before reaching out, a pause where there used to be urgency. That pause was important. It wasn't apathy, it was information. Your nervous system was recalculating. It noticed that chasing never led to safety, only temporary relief. And relief is not nourishment, it's a stopgap. Over time, your system stopped expecting that effort would be rewarded, not consciously, physiologically. Your body learned that staying still hurt less than reaching and collapsing again. So the impulse faded, not because you didn't care, but because your system no longer believed movement would bring closeness. That's regulation beginning. And regulation feels flat when you're used to chaos. There's no adrenaline, no spike, no rush, just steadiness. And steadiness can feel like loss. When your identity was built around pursuit, you might have noticed how quiet your mind became, how you stopped rehearsing messages, how you no longer felt compelled to explain your absence. That quiet wasn't emptiness, it was capacity returning. You had energy again, for yourself, for your body, for moments that didn't revolve around someone else's availability. This is where guilt shows up, because you were praised for trying harder, for being patient, for not giving up. So when you stopped chasing, it felt like failure, like you were doing something wrong, like you were withholding love. But love doesn't require depletion, and your body finally understood that. You didn't stop caring. You stopped overfunctioning. There's a difference. Overfunctioning keeps relationships alive that don't sustain you. It fills gaps that aren't yours to fill. It creates the illusion of closeness without mutual effort. When you stopped chasing, the illusion dissolved, and what remained was clarity. Not clarity about them, clarity about you, about how much you were doing, about how little you were receiving, about how often you confused hope with connection. That awareness didn't harden you, it grounded you. You realized that caring doesn't mean putting your nervous system at risk. That desire doesn't require pursuit. That mutuality doesn't need convincing. So now, when something matters, you don't rush toward it. You let it come closer. You watch how it responds to stillness. You notice whether presence remains. Without effort, that's not disinterest. That's discernment. You're not withholding. You're allowing space for truth to reveal itself. Because chasing covered truth, it kept you busy. It kept you hopeful. It kept you from seeing what was actually there. Stillness reveals, and revelation is not always comfortable, but it's honest. You don't chase anymore because your body learned that safety doesn't require pursuit. It requires reciprocity, and reciprocity moves toward you without being asked. You still care. You just care from inside yourself now. Not from the edge of depletion, not from anxiety, not from fear of loss. That's growth. Quiet, unimpressive, but deeply stabilizing. There's a moment most women don't talk about. It happens after the chasing stops, after the silence settles, after you realize no one is coming to pull you back into the old dynamic. That moment can feel empty, not because you lost something, but because you lost a role. The role of the one who holds things together, the one who remembers, initiates, soothes, explains, the one who senses distance before it's admitted. When you stop chasing, you stop performing emotional labor that was never named, and suddenly there's space. That space can feel unsettling because your identity was wrapped around responsiveness, around being needed, around being the emotional translator. In relationships that couldn't speak honestly, you were fluent in reading tone, timing, energy shifts, and now that skill has nowhere to go. At first, your system doesn't know what to do with the quiet, so it looks for danger. It asks questions like, am I becoming cold? Am I giving up too easily? Should I try one more time? These questions aren't intuition, they're withdrawal symptoms. Your nervous system was accustomed to stimulation, to uncertainty, to the emotional roller coaster that came with intermittent connection. When that stops, the body recalibrates, and recalibration feels unfamiliar. Unfamiliar often gets mislabeled as wrong, but wrong would feel sharp, punishing, urgent. What you're feeling now is steady, muted, grounded. That's regulation. Regulation doesn't feel exciting. It feels neutral, and neutrality can feel like loss when you're used to intensity. This is where many women self-sabotage. They mistake calm for disinterest and go looking for something to feel again, something to activate the system, a message, a memory, a reach out, not because they want the person, but because their body wants familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, even when it's harmful. Your restraint now isn't indifference, it's integration. Your system is learning. That closeness doesn't require vigilance. That connection doesn't require monitoring. That love doesn't require constant proof. You're no longer confusing attention with attunement. Someone can be present and still unavailable. Someone can be consistent without being safe. You learn that the hard way. And that learning didn't harden you, it refined you. Now, when someone pulls away, your body doesn't panic, it observes. When communication shifts, you don't chase clarity, you wait for behavior to explain itself. That's not emotional distance, that's emotional maturity. You're no longer trying to secure connection, you're assessing it from a grounded place, from inside yourself. This is why you don't chase anymore, even when you care, because care doesn't override self-trust now. You don't abandon yourself to preserve a bond. You don't negotiate your needs into something smaller so someone else stays comfortable. And here's the quiet truth. When you stop chasing, some connections faded, not because you withdrew love, but because effort was the only thing holding them together. What stayed didn't need pursuit. It met you. It noticed you. It didn't punish stillness. That's the difference. You're not withholding energy. You're conserving it. For connections that don't require strategy. For relationships that don't ask your nervous system to stay on high alert. You're learning that wanting someone isn't enough. They have to meet you without being chased, without being convinced, without being managed. That realization doesn't feel dramatic. It feels sobering. And sobriety is the beginning of freedom. You don't chase anymore because your body learned what peace feels like, and it refuses to trade that for emotional noise. There's a quiet grief that comes with not chasing anymore. Not grief for the person, grief for the version of you who thought love required effort. That hurt. She believed if she just showed up better, softer, more patient, connection would stabilize. She wasn't foolish. She was loyal. Inside an unstable bond. Now, you don't reach. And sometimes, you miss the certainty that effort created. At least when you chased, you knew what to do. You had a role. Now, you wait. And waiting reveals everything. Who follows through? Who notices absence? Who confuses silence with indifference? Who only feels close when you're the one closing the gap? This phase is not about punishment. It's about truth. When you stop chasing, you stop buffering other people from the consequences of their emotional limits. You let reality speak, and reality is always clearer than reassurance. You're not cold. You're precise. You're not distant. You're selective. You're not withholding love. You're directing it inward first. That's why your energy feels different now, more contained, less reactive. You don't feel the need to prove your value through availability. You don't feel the urge to collapse boundaries, to keep someone close. You've learned that real closeness doesn't require pursuit. It requires presence, mutual presence. If someone disappears, when you stop chasing, they didn't lose you. They lost access to your effort, and access was never the same as intimacy. This understanding doesn't make you superior. It makes you grounded. You can care without chasing. You can love without overextending. You can want connection without abandoning yourself to maintain it. That balance is emotional adulthood. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything because now your body knows what safety feels like, and it won't move toward anything that requires you to leave yourself behind. If this landed, let it land. You don't need to act on it. You don't need to decide anything. Just notice what feels calm instead of compelling. That's your system leading now, and you're allowed to trust it.